welcome. Bigger dreams require bigger sacrifices. So we're going to be exploring all things related to sacrifice. And when it comes to the dreams, when it comes to the things you want to create in your life, you have to sacrifice something to be able to achieve it. Sacrifice is a fundamental pathway to our dreams. We cannot achieve what we want in life without making important sacrifices. And I'm going to be exploring that today. So for those of you who are interested in my Becoming Superhuman program that you've heard me talk about, if you are interested and want more details, post me a message and I'll add you to the list to send out when those details are ready. Sacrifice. Sacrificing to the gods of your dreams was another title I was going to give for this one. So I used to get it very wrong. In fact, for the past few years, I've got it wrong. Not in the way I've been doing it, or even the work I've done with my clients necessarily, but in my understanding of the nature of sacrifice and the nature of dream attainment. Because I had this idea, this misguided idea, that so the way I saw it was this: I know what I want to create in this world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create elements of that within my day so that my day reflects my future, right? So I'm shaping my day in a similar way that I want my future to be. And if I just keep doing that, it will grow into my future. So it makes sense on some level that is possible, that it is possible to begin to shape your life now for what it will be in the future. It makes sense, but it misses a lot. It misses a hell of a lot of what's actually required. Now, this came to my awareness when I went to a talk a couple of weeks ago, a guy called Jordan Peterson, psychologist. He's a fascinating guy, very controversial figure actually, misunderstood most of the time actually, but fascinating, and a very intelligent guy who's done a lot of research. One of the areas that he's researched is biblical stories and the history of things like sacrifice. And he was talking about this during the talk itself. And he was exploring the emergence of sacrifice, like within the Bible and other religions too, but within the Bible specifically, and the nature of sacrificing an animal, like killing an animal, burning it and sacrificing it to the gods, so that, or to God, it was a single God, it's all right, I'm thinking of Greek mythology, which I loved years ago. So sacrificing to God, so that God will then give you a good life, that will then look after you on this planet. It was that kind of thing. It's like, I'm going to make this sacrifice that feels meaningful to be able to create a life that is meaningful, and so I can get what I want in life for me and my family. That's the principle there. And he even went into the nature of work itself, and that at some point in our evolution, in our societal evolution, we realise that to be able to attain things in the future, we have to give up things now. Going to work is one example, because we know that the way he describes it a lot better than I do, but we are aware of ourselves through time, all that we've been and all that we will be for the rest of our lives. We're aware of that. And that means we can make decisions in this moment based upon a future that doesn't yet exist. And so to do that, we may decide that we want to provide for a family we don't even yet have. To do that, well, I would not be able to afford it while I'm hanging around on the hills just chewing some grass, so maybe I'll become a shepherd. I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit more complex than that, but essentially along those lines, right? And so the principle of work itself is sacrifice. Sacrifice now for a better future. Now, in society, we've got that wrong in a lot of ways, and our relationship to it has become flawed because, of course, we have much more choices now. Life can be so much more, and we have a range of things we can go into. And yet society isn't set up for the variety that we have now, the variety of choice, the individuality, the fact that we can pretty much make money doing anything if you get really good at it and it's of service to someone else, right? Whether it be entertainment or something of, like being a surgeon, whatever it may be, there are so many ways, a really wide spectrum of ways that you can now make money, which you can then exchange for things that we can use to live and have a good life, right? And so we've got that confused. And so because the way I did it was bad, like I just showed up at work, went through the motions, and I was sacrificing really for a future I didn't even want, to be truthful. However, because of that, I think that's why I was tainted my view on sacrifice, which meant that I was explaining it in a poor way, saying you don't need to give up things to be able to create a future. But it missed an awful lot. And so something else that that people that often talk about is called follow your bliss. You may have heard it. And it's like, follow the things that you love, and just, whatever your passions are, just follow them and explore in that way. And it's one of those things that's true, but also not true. Because one, not everyone is aware of what their passions are, especially if you've been bogged down and the weight of life. You can't necessarily even perceive what those things might be. Even if you do though, let's say you're struck by lightning and you have this epiphany and you know what your calling is. You're like, right, this is it for the rest of my life. Let's just say that's true. To be able to attain it and live that way, you need to sacrifice a lot of things. A lot of hard work has to happen for you to get there. You have to overcome a lot of personal challenge. You have to decide the structures around your life will need to change. That could be friendships, family. It could be relationships with loved ones. It could be many things. In fact, because the structures in your life right now support the life you have right now. If you want a different future, you have to change the structures that are in your life right now. You have to sacrifice certain things, and that can be hard work. That is not easy. Example of sacrifice that I made, because I realised when I was at the talk, I started to assess my life really, and the things that are transformed. I realised everything meaningful that's transformed, particularly the past 5 years, because that's really all that when this has been, 5 and a bit years, has happened because of sacrifice. I was on stage last weekend, right, the Wellbeing Now experience in London. Incredible experience. I was talking about how to live a life beyond your fear. Now, standing on that stage, I felt at home. I was like, this is where I should be. It felt great. I love it deeply. It's a beautiful thing to be connected to people, to see the spark in their eyes, and just to notice the things that are resonating, and to have them engaging with each other as well, and taking something that I know is transformative, right? It's deeply meaningful. But go back to the beginning of 2014 when I did my first ever one. It was excruciating agony. It was painful, and it was, for many times when I was doing it, I felt excruciating agony every time I was preparing and doing these talks. Now, so I had to sacrifice how I felt, right? I had to sacrifice my feelings. It didn't matter that I was in excruciating agony, because what I wanted was more important than that. I wanted to change my life, the life of my family, and I wanted to make a difference to others. So those things were far more important than my own feelings. So I had to sacrifice it. It was a worthy sacrifice, but I had to be willing to sacrifice that to change. Now, of course, I'm doing something that's passionate and meaningful, but it was hard work and it was painful. The sacrifice had to be made. You cannot avoid sacrifice if you want something that you don't currently have. That's just the way it is. Consider actually right now. Consider the something you want. Do you have a dream? Do you have something that you want in your future? And consider this. What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve it? I was just giving you time to think. We often want to, in fact, I answered a question earlier today, this morning. Someone asked me a question. It was along the lines of, how do I maintain my self-esteem whilst I keep getting rejected whilst going for jobs? That was the question. My answer was, you don't. You don't maintain self-esteem. That's not relevant. You feel it deeply. You feel whatever the emotions are that you're feeling. They're okay. You're supposed to feel them. And you use the energy from those emotions to do the work required. Because if you're consistently failing at it, you need to look at what you're doing. You may need to, in fact, first accept how you feel, because that's just the way it is. And then be willing to keep going if it's meaningful enough to you, was something else. And then it was direct advice as well. maybe you haven't researched the companies you're applying for deeply enough, the role deeply enough. Maybe you haven't trained yourself to be good enough at interviews yet, and you can do that because you can practice the interview questions. If you've done loads of interviews, you must know what kind of questions you're going to get asked, right? You can practice, rehearse, and train. You can record videos of yourself. You can watch yourself back, and you can work hard to become really good at interviews if you want to. There's work that can be done, and then you can utilize those interviews as training to become really good at getting jobs. And at some point, you're going to get a job. And what I also recommended was go for the companies that you prefer to work in, because that, again, if you're like, I really want to work there, it's meaningful enough. It makes it easier to make those sacrifices, right? Because that's the other thing about it. One of the reasons why you may be having trouble making a sacrifice, if you are, is because the dream isn't really worth the sacrifice that you want to make. So if you want to create a life that's far beyond the one you're living, one that feels like a dream life, one that you almost pinch yourself because you're like, this, I did not know life could get this good. If you really want a life like that, which is available to you, don't know when or how, but it's available to you because you're alive and you're here watching this. If you want that, it's going to require more of you than you've ever given. Because the reality is it's most likely a dream that's bigger than the life you've got now. It means it requires you to do things you haven't done before. It requires you to become a different person than you are currently. And that can be painful, stressful, hard work. The road to everything you want is hard. It's not easy to get there. Why is it that when you look around at most people, they aren't living their dream life? Because it isn't easy. Now I remember, actually I love The Matrix as a metaphor, as the movie called The Matrix. If you haven't seen it, get off this right now, because the metaphor around it's wonderful. But there's a beautiful thing within it where they say, because the machines have created this world, right? This virtual reality world that we're living in. We're not aware we're living in it unless you get woken up, and then you can find out and you can do some stuff. But if you don't know, what they did was originally they created a perfect world, one that had no pain, no anguish, and no challenge. And people started to go insane, and they kept popping themselves out of the matrix. They could not get a perfect world to work. And so they had to deliberately put in things like, and they obviously put in like horrors and things like this, because they said, I think it's something along the lines of the humans need that kind of pain and anguish. But I don't think that's true. But what we do need is challenge. We need to be stimulated. We need to work hard, because it's through stimulation that we get to rise up, that we get to grow, that we get to become more of ourselves. It's how it happens. And so the way to create what we want in the future is by consistent stimulation, by consistent growth, and consistently stepping into the life that we want. And it's hard work. It's going to feel really crap at times. It just will. And sacrifice is a vital part of that. We have, if you look around at your life, we all have the same amount of time. We use it differently, but we only ever have a day, a day to do stuff. And part of that day, we need to be zoned out and sleeping, right? Totally unconscious. We've evolved with that's necessary. So roughly around 16 hours is all we've got per day to do everything. That's all we've got. That doesn't change. We have limited resources. We have limited attention for those people we love. We have limited, and if you've got children as well, right? You're limited in what you can do, but not limited in a bad way. It's just a reality of what are the confines of your life, the structures of your life that you've created around you. What are the ones that are flexible, and what are the ones that are changeable? If you want a different life to the one you're leading right now, some of those things have to be sacrificed. There's no other way. I've got a client right now. He has landed in Thailand a couple of weeks ago. He's given up for his dream, right? His dream is to be a professional life coach and to live with his wife in Asia. That's the dream, to create this life with her in Asia. Beautiful dream. But he's going out there with no experience of working there, no real plan, like firm plan of what to do. So obviously we worked with him on some loose stuff, but obviously until he's there, he's not going to know what to do, and he's just settling in, right? So it's a huge unknown. So he's given up stable job, he's given up friends, he's given up his all the relatives that live close to him. He's given up everything he knows and loves except for his wife and the dream career that he's going for. So he has made an almighty sacrifice, is what he's done. And that is a worthy sacrifice for the future with his wife and the career that he wants. So by the willingness to do that, I mean, he's excited about it. Obviously there's fear coming up, but there's excitement there. And the reality is he has made a very worthy sacrifice for an incredibly worthy dream. And what I've found is it's like the sacrifice needs to almost feel bigger than the dream itself, because the dream will expand and change and grow anyway. But in the moment, it needs to feel meaningful and like you're putting something on the line. Without putting something on the line, what are you going to risk? It's like people say the universe is going to meet you halfway, right? What a load of rubbish that is. One, how the hell do you know what halfway is to what you want? Because it's a fantasy. You've got no idea what halfway is. Two, why would some arbitrary universe decide that they're going to meet you in a certain point? Yeah, I know, you come 50% of the way, I'm going to wait here. 49%, no, 50, yep, I'm coming, and here's your dream. It's not like that. What I've found is you need to be willing to do all of the work. You need to be willing to not get any reward for it either. The work itself, the sacrifices, the meaning on the way kind of need to be enough. And then, eventually, if you continue and it's meaningful enough, and obviously you do good work, then something happens on the other side of that you cannot even imagine. It's not even possible. You cannot comprehend what the dream life will be like, feel like, and it be experienced, because you're looking at it from the way you are in your life right now, from the confines of your space. Now, one of the things that I've discovered in working with a lot of people as a life coach over the years and doing hundreds of talks and workshops is this: people have this invisible wall around their life, an invisible wall that you cannot see beyond. And so when I ask questions about what people want, their answers are related to the walls that they've got up. So sometimes it takes quite a while to break that down, so people can actually, even just taking a risk to think of something beyond the walls can be challenging. At the talk I did last week, exactly that. I got them to envision if they could do anything. If fear wasn't a problem, education, money, experiences, it didn't matter what they thought they were capable of. If they could do anything, what would that be? And I got them to close their eyes, I got them to experience it for a few minutes, and I got them to talk about it, right? I know for a fact that some people there weren't even able to speak about it, weren't able to think or share or anything. It was too much. The weight of it was too big. Now imagine that for a moment. You've probably got a version of this, whether you're aware of it or not, of a lack of willingness to imagine far beyond your circumstances, and that just shows a level of where someone is in their life, actually. But of course you can transcend that, and sacrifice actually is a really great way to be able to do that, because it's like if you were sacrificing to the gods of your dreams. You are sacrificing, and by sacrificing you step closer to them. So if this makes sense, let me know. Comment, give me any questions. If you're watching on the replay as well, join in the conversation. In the previous Becoming Superhuman videos that I've been doing, people have been having conversations way afterwards. So feel free to post anything you want here. What's your experience of sacrifice? Does this make sense to you? Do you disagree? I do enjoy a bit of disagreement sometimes. Sometimes it helps advance the conversation. Sometimes I'm not explaining it clearly enough. So please feel free to engage if you feel inspired to. Now, for those of you who want more out of life, I've got my Becoming Superhuman program beginning next year, which I'll be opening up applications for very soon. If you're interested and want to know more, send me a message and I'll send those details along to you. There'll be sacrifices for that, I tell you. So, are your dreams worth the sacrifice? Because this is the other thing that I've noticed, that because of what I was just sharing about people having these invisible walls they can't see beyond, so then when they are making sacrifices, it actually feels disproportionate to to what they're creating. It doesn't feel like enough. And so what might need to happen is that you may need to stretch that dream, to change it completely, to make it bigger, or to change the sacrifice related to it. There's something wrong. Because the sacrifice, it has a heavy weight to it. It's probably why I was so against it, or didn't like the whole term around it. But sacrifice itself, it's like, it feels good. It feels real good. As a small sacrifice that I'm doing many things, but one of them is I'm training my body to be like elite in many areas, right? I mean, it's a long goal, and I've got a long way to go. But an example of this is in my cupboard. I've got all these chocolates and stuff, and when I want to eat them, and I want to eat them all because I really enjoy chocolates. So I look in the cupboard and I connect to that, and then I consider what I want, like training tomorrow, for instance. I'm like, if I eat that now, I am essentially giving up my future a little bit by doing that, right? I am setting back my training. I am setting back my physique, actually. My physical abilities is what I'm doing. And so if I was to consume that now, at least as much as I want to consume, that would be me giving up, sacrificing my future for my present, for just a few minutes really. Enjoyment is what I would be doing. So when I make that choice, when I say no to that, it feels good. It feels real good, because in that moment, I feel closer to my dream, closer to that aspect of my dream. So sacrifice itself is a real beautiful thing if it's appropriate for what you want to create. Nima says, I told my 10-year-old son today that we all have the ability to be superhuman. That is wonderful. What a beautiful age to bring that in. It's a very wonderful thing. And if you reinforce that through experience, through very simple thing, because in my years of experience actually, and working with hundreds and hundreds of people, what I've noticed is the ones who are very successful young. I don't just mean successful financially. I mean successful in life, with relationships, friendships, loving life at a very young age. When I'm talking 20 to 21, very successful in their careers, very successful in their lives altogether. What I've noticed consistently is they've got at least one parent who, when they share their dreams with their parent, the parent just goes, great, I'm with you. The very first time, the first reaction is yes. Friend of mine, she's been doing gymnastics for since she was a child, and then she was going to go to university and study some things to kind of have a normal career, or at least a backup career. And then she phoned up her mum one day when she decided she couldn't do that, and phoned up her mum and said, Mum, I'm joining the circus. And the mum's reaction was, okay, if that makes you happy, go do it. First reaction, instinctual reaction. It's no surprise that now she travels the world shooting bows and arrows with her feet, upside down doing handstands. Arissa Kelly, she's awesome. Check her out, actually, you can Google her. She shoots flaming arrows with her feet is what she does. That's the career she's carved for herself. And that's a direct result of having a parent, a mother in fact, just giving her that support immediately. So what a beautiful thing. Because we've got no idea what we're capable of. And the thing is, we've all got limitations, right? There are certain genetic and potentially other limitations that get created throughout our lives. We do have limitations, of course. We just have no idea what they are. And because of the nature of how we overprotect ourselves, the nature of survival, the nature of our primal way of being, most of us will never get to find out even close to what that is. And so it's really, this is why I think the superhuman thing is so important. It's like, fuck human. Let's go for as far as we can go, physically, psychologically, emotionally. Have your dreams, go for it. If you fail, so what? Go for it anyway, right? It's so damn important. And that's why sacrifice is a very important part of this. It's a vital part of this. Because when you're sacrificing, you are giving something now for a future. Let's say your boy, let's say he wants to train to be an elite athlete for some kind. He's going to have to give up certain things, right? He's going to have to make choices throughout his life as to, even just if he chooses to be a footballer, for instance. I was coaching football earlier today, so that's why it's in my mind. Let's say he wants to be a professional footballer, and he's going to have to give up, sacrifice other things he may be very good at to focus more on that one if he wants to be professional at it. There'll be sacrifices to be made. He may need to be sacrificed eating rubbish food if he wants his body to be primed and ready and healing, so he's got the maximum abilities to be able to become a professional footballer, right? And there's many other things that might have to happen. The point is, it's really important to know it's a good thing. You're sacrificing because you want that. Don't sacrifice all things though. And this is where a lot go wrong, particularly with athletes or people on the extreme side of things. They're sacrificing too much of their life for one aspect of their dream. They think the dream is that all by itself, not realizing that life is about friendship and love and connection and fun and adventure and a broad spectrum. It's important to expand dreams out into the entire life as what it is. Otherwise, they often end up regretting what they've done or sabotaging it without realizing that by protecting themselves, they sabotage it. So this came up with a guy I was coaching recently. So he's in America, and since he passed the bar, which is like how you become a lawyer in America, he's wanted to work for this very prestigious law firm. Like 20 years he'd had this dream. He's like, if only I can work for this law firm, right? He's worked damn hard all these years. And now he's in a position where he could work there. They've offered him something. Now, we're exploring this, but it wasn't an easy yes for him. Not like it would have been a few years before, because now he has a wife, he has children, and it's a big ask, really, what's required. And so we're exploring this idea, because he was surprised at himself. He thought this should be an easy decision, surely. This is my dream. And he was confused as to why it seemed difficult. And for me, of course, it's obvious. So my question to him was, okay, what would you need to sacrifice if you were to do this? What would you need to give up to be able to achieve that dream? And we explored what he'd need to give up. We explored the time when he wouldn't be able to spend time on a weekend with his children anymore. At least twice a month he wouldn't be able to, because he'd have to be travelling for this role. He'd actually have to give up seeing his kids at all during the week, because the hours he'd be working meant he wouldn't see them in the morning. He'd be getting up and leaving before they wake up. He'd be getting home late after they go to sleep. So he'd miss out essentially on their life. And the commitment to this job, it's not just like a little commitment, it's a huge commitment. And he shouldn't make it lightly. And so when we explored all the different areas, then what I said to him was, go talk to your wife, really consider what life would be like, see if you can make it work, if it's worth her sacrifice, if it's worth the children's sacrifice, if it's worth your sacrifice. Explore it and see. So he did all that. And then when he came back, he decided that it wasn't worth it at all. Because although that was the dream, he was carrying it with him for all those years, the dream had changed. His dream for his life was very different than it was. And so for him to do that would mean that he'd give up the greater dream. He'd give up the things that actually have become far more meaningful to him. And so when it comes to the dream, it's really important the dream aligns with the life we want, and that we then line up the sacrifices directly to the dreams that we want. Thank you for the loves. I do love the loves. Now, I like coming up with binaries, like an on-off kind of thing, a way of helping. It helps them navigate moment-by-moment experience in this way. So I came up with this one for sacrifice, and it is very simply this. It is you are either sacrificing the present for the future, or you're sacrificing the future for the present. And in your actions, in what you're doing, that will reflect whether you're building towards the future that you desire, or you are keeping yourself where you are and letting go of the future you say you want. And it's really, I recommend that you pay attention to this in your life. Consider for a moment what you've done today. Look at your actions from when you woke up to when you went to now, I guess, because you're not asleep yet. Were your actions, or which actions were directed to the present only, which was so you're sacrificing a potential future by focusing purely on the present? And which actions were focused on the future? What did you sacrifice today for the dream that you say you want? And then see. Now with my clients, they do these assessments where they assess their lives. And I found it really useful, actually. My coach did it to me years ago, and I've evolved it in my own way. And one of the questions that I've begun asking them each week, at the beginning of the week, is, what are you going to sacrifice? What are you willing to sacrifice this week for the dream that you say you want? What are you willing to sacrifice? And in fact, ask yourself that question right now. Answer it. So consider the dream, something you want in life, and look ahead at the week ahead and decide, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because it will require your time, it will require your attention, it will require more from you. Daniel says, I had to sacrifice a day of work to help my Jen. Wonderful. Yes, sacrifice work, whether that felt like a sacrifice. Actually, did that feel like a sacrifice? Because sometimes if you cut something out, it isn't necessarily a sacrifice, but it might be, of course, and it's a beautiful thing, and that's an important thing too. It's like, what are you willing to do for those you love as well, right? As well as the dreams, the greater dreams. It's like, what sacrifices are you making? Like, for instance, I have to be, with the time that I give to different people, I have to decide, well, actually, that's going to impact on time with like my mum, or time with my someone that I've agreed to see already, or my clients, or it's like, there has to be sacrifice there. But if we do it with purpose, and we're very clear on why we're doing it, sacrifice feels good. Sacrifice feels worthy. And that's the important thing, to make sure that your life and your sacrifices are worthy of what you want. And make sure that you're dreaming bigger than you've ever dreamed before, right? Make sure your dreams are big enough, they're exciting enough, that the sacrifices lead to something. Because even if you feel life is hard, there's more possibility. When you've got something to aim for, it can actually make life feel better now. It can help you transcend what you're going through, and then make you want to sacrifice more. Because what I've found is that the more you sacrifice, and the more you own and feel deeply the sacrifice, the closer your dream becomes, actually. It feels closer. It feels like you're walking through the dream already, because of you're walking with that sacrifice. And then something interesting happens. What I've noticed is it's almost like, it's like people can see it, and so opportunities come to you that you couldn't expect. Maybe it's most likely because the way you speak is different. Maybe the way you carry yourself is different. Maybe because you're so present to your dream, because you are embodying that sacrifice, that actually the opportunities that are there all the time, and now you're able to see them because you're carrying that with you. So sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice for the dreams that you have? Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to give them. As I've said, I've been following up with people days after these lives go out, so please feel free to do that. I want to hear from you. It's very interesting to hear, what this means to you, what you're doing with this, and to continue the conversation. So thank you for that. Now, if anyone is interested in my Becoming Superhuman program, which is hotting up, by the way, I'm having conversations with pilots, with astronauts, about how to make this even better. A series of incredibly challenging experiences next year, a culmination of everything I've done personally and professionally, from the beginning that I can think of, everything focused in taking this group of people and turning them into superhumans. That's what's happening next year. And I'll be opening up applications soon. If you want to have more details, send me a private message and I'll send you those details through when they're ready. So sacrifice. Consider what it is you're willing to sacrifice, what it is why you're bothering to sacrifice as well, and see what happens in your life when you do. Thank you for being here.